Hello, welcome to the Basics of Managing Records. What follows is our essential guidance, the core of every records management training we offer. The Basics of Managing Records fulfills the records management and retention requirements for the Open Government Training Act. The Office of the Attorney General provides training for the Public Records Act. This training is for government agency employees who create or receive records. That's pretty much all of us. We can't address every records management challenge in the next half hour, but we'll provide the foundational knowledge to get you started, and we'll point you towards the resources that will keep you moving forward. First, we'll familiarize ourselves with records management and public records. Then, we'll introduce you to our records retention schedules, and we'll end the presentation by introducing strategies to manage your public records. Records management is all about control. It allows you and I to be compliant, efficient, and transparent at every stage of a record's lifecycle. The lifecycle of a record begins when it is created or received. This is the perfect time to make sure everyone understands the records management responsibilities, that there are policies and procedures in place to guide the management of those records, and that all agency staff is trained to manage their records. Getting ahead in the first step of a record's lifecycle guarantees straightforward retrieval, disclosure, disposition down the line. This is also a great time to talk to your agency's records officer if you have one. They offer an indispensable agency-specific perspective on all things records management. My team is here for everyone, but your agency's records officer is there for you. In the use stage, you might share records over email or edit them as a team in a shared folder. For those records to be useful to your agency, they need to be organized for accessibility. A records inventory is an excellent tool to identify what you have, where it's stored, and how long it needs to be kept. You may want to explore adopting tools to simplify the organization of and access to your records. This could include third-party software solutions or getting some shelving to help you organize your paper records. After you're done using a record, it moves into storage. This may be the stage at which records are the most inactive, but not when it comes to records management. Record storage is the core of our work because this is where retention comes in. Understanding retention requirements, retaining records in the appropriate format for the approved amount of time, and protecting essential records are all necessary to fulfill your obligations to your agency and the public. The last stage in a record's life cycle is destruction or preservation. Records management is as much about destruction as it is retention. Transferring records to the Washington State Archives is an important part of preserving records that serve a greater historical purpose. Ultimately, when your agency's records are organized, you can focus on the most important part of your job, serving your community. Records management is an essential function of any government agency and will make your work and your life easier. First, it enables your agency to fulfill its mission. Information is one of your agency's most valuable assets, and managing your records helps you to find the records that you need when you need them. When your agency has access to the right information, it can make the best possible decisions. Second, it's a lot more cost-effective. If an agency is keeping only what it needs to keep and only for the necessary amount of time, there will be fewer records to manage. You'll save on storage costs and staff time, leaving more time and space for you to focus on yourself and the service you provide to your community. Managing records promotes open and accountable government by documenting your public service. When your agency can respond to records requests quickly and completely, they are demonstrating their compliance with state and federal law. And ultimately, records management protects you and your agency from unnecessary risk. Public records are valuable informational assets that need your care and consideration. Records management offers the framework to provide that care, and the Washington State Archives is here to help. So what is a public record? Public records are anything made or received in the transaction of public business. And if it wasn't clear by the name, public records are public property. Remember that public records aren't just text documents. They can be audio recordings, social media posts, PowerPoint slide decks, emails, and even chat logs. Anything you create or share in work is a public record regardless of format or device, personal and professional. Sending work emails from your personal phone, still a public record. If you don't want to create or receive public records on your personal devices, don't use them for work. With so many ways to communicate, it's important to develop policies and procedures that address the capture, access, retrieval, and retention requirements for records generated or received on platforms like Zoom, Facebook, or Teams chat. For instance, as a consultant, I provide advice over email. Emails, like any other record you create, have retention value. Every day, I dispose of transitory emails and work to file and organize what's left for retention. There is no blanket retention for emails. If you're an administrator in a police department, you could be working with case files and a larger database system. If you are a social media coordinator, your records can take the form of tweets, status updates, or Instagram posts. All of this content, regardless of format, needs to be managed. Be mindful that there are consequences to the mismanagement of public records. The police aren't going to come knock on your door if you accidentally delete an email, but there are serious financial and reputational penalties for deliberate records misconduct. And please note, the Washington State Archives is here to help you with the retention, destruction, and preservation of public records. The State Attorney General's Office assists with disclosure and the Public Records Act. So how do you know what you need to keep and how long you need to keep it? The answer to that question lies in the records retention schedules. They specify how long to keep specific types of records. They also give agencies the authority to destroy or transfer records that have met retention. Records retention schedules are legal documents created and approved for your use by the state or local records committees. The committee members apply their expertise to address legal, historical, financial, and audit requirements. To determine retention lengths, we examine the agency's business needs, laws and professional standards, statutes of limitation, or the amount of time legal action can be taken after an event has occurred. For example, you have 3 years to report and litigate a personal injury, so records documenting that injury are retained for at least 3 years. You have 6 years to report and litigate a breach of contract, so records documenting that contract are retained for at least 6 years. And you have 10 years to recover real property, so records documenting ownership of that property are retained for at least 10 years. We also consider historical significance or compliance value. And finally, we look at audit examination periods when considering retention lengths. If you work for a state agency, you'll use the state retention schedules. And if you work for a local agency, you'll use the local retention schedules. I'm going to take a break from the presentation here and walk you through our website. I want to give you a sense of where you'll find the retention schedules and how to navigate them.
This is the Washington State Archives website, sos.wa.gov/archives. So whether you're a state agency or local government agency, this is where you're going to find your retention schedules as well as records management advice. So if you're a state agency, you're going to want to go ahead and click State Agencies here at the top navigation bar. From here, you'll be taken to a landing page that not only provides you access to your approved records retention schedules, but also offers a lot of additional guidance and advice to help you through any records management challenge that you may have. But I'm going to go ahead and click into records retention schedules to give you a sense of what that looks like. So from here, you're going to be taken to a rather long list of records retention schedules. But at the very top, you'll find the State General Schedule, which is the general schedule that applies to all state government agencies. These are the types of records that all state government agencies create, like HR records or finance records or administrative records. Under that, you'll find sector-specific schedules like law enforcement or the public school schedule. And further along, you'll find state agency unique schedules like the Apple Commission or the Blueberry Commission or the Court of Appeals. So that's where you locate the records retention schedules for state agencies. Now, if you work for a local government agency, you're going to want to go ahead and access the local government's link from here at the top navigation bar. And from here, you're going to be taken to a list of types of government entities, and you just want to find the one that applies to you and your agency. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and click Cities. And from here, you're going to be taken to a Managing City Records landing page. And each of those government entities are going to take you to its appropriate landing page. And the landing page, just like the State General landing page, is where you'll not only find your records retention schedules, but also you're going to find a lot of additional guidance to help you with your records management journey. But here, I'm going to go ahead and click into the core here at the top. And so the core, like the State General Schedule, is the general schedule that applies to all local government agencies because they're all creating HR records, finance records, and administrative management records. But while I'm in this schedule, I want to show you 3 navigation strategies. And the first strategy I want everyone to be aware of is how to use the table of contents. So most of us is familiar with how a table of contents operates, and it gives you the page number, and it just generally categorizes a body of text into different categories. And for the purpose of records retention schedules, we break them down into functional categories, which are these larger categories like agency management or asset management. And we break them down further into what we call activities, such as meetings and hearings, reporting, and maintenance. So the table of contents in this situation is particularly powerful because you can literally just click into it and it takes you exactly where you need to go. So that's the first navigation strategy I want everyone to be familiar with, the table of contents. Now the second strategy I want to show you here this morning is Control F. So if you click Control F on your keyboard, depending on what browser you use, it's going to look a little different, but essentially a search bar is going to pop up. And a search bar is going to help you run a keyword search on the entire document. So say I have a training record that I want to determine the retention of. I'm going to go ahead and type in training. So it looks like the word training comes up 63 times in this document. What happens if I add an S? Oh, twice. So the word trainings only comes up 2 times. And this is really important to be aware of because as you change your keyword, so too will the results. But really, I don't want to page through the 63 different places that the word training crops up. So I'm glad that it's taken me to the third strategy, which is using the subject index. So the subject index is going to be located at the back of every records retention schedule. And the subject index is really powerful because maybe you do have like a really general keyword that's bringing up too many results and you do not have the time to go through all of those results. So what you can do is, so for our example, we're looking for training. So we scroll down, I should just use my little thing here. And we want to go to training. All right, so let's look for training. All right, so we have agency-provided training, general training, mandatory training, civil rights training. So this is really fantastic because we had that really broad category and it didn't necessarily get us to where we needed to go because it gave us 63 different results. So this is powerful because it tells you exactly what page to go to find what you're looking for. Unlike the table of contents, you can't just click and be taken there, but you can just take the page number, the appropriate page number, say we have general training that we're trying to find the retention of, and just pop it into your page number bar, and it'll take you where you need to go. So those are the 3 navigation strategies: the table of contents, Control F, and the subject index.
This is a screenshot of one record series, Meetings, Staff, and Internal Committees, that you'll find in Core and the State General Schedule. Retention schedules are lists of record types an agency manages, much like any list you create or use in your work. Each type of record has a Disposition Authority Number, or DAN. DANs are unique identifiers that authorize the retention and disposition of a record. Like most unique alphanumeric identifiers, DANs don't make much sense on their own, but in the context of an entire schedule, they quickly distinguish one series from another. DANs are important to include in inventories, box content lists, or disposition logs. The Description of Records field is where you can expect to spend most of your time. It describes the business function and type of record that falls under that DAN. It includes descriptions and examples of records included and excluded in that business process. This can seem confusing at first, but knowing what types of records are included as well as excluded will help you identify the correct series. But keep in mind, your record may still fall under that DAN if it matches the description but isn't specifically identified in the included list. This happens a lot because different agencies call the same document or file by a different name. Thankfully, record series are functional and not subject or department dependent. The retention and disposition action tells you how long to retain a record, when that countdown starts, and what you do with the record once it has met retention. In this example, you have 2 countdown triggers: end of calendar year and until no longer needed for agency business. As soon as both is satisfied, the record is retained for 2 years before being destroyed. The designation field can go in one of several ways, starting with archival or non-archival. Archival records have public research value and should be transferred to the Washington State Archives for appraisal or permanent retention. Non-archival records can be destroyed as soon as they've met retention. Another designation category is essential or non-essential. Essential records need to be protected and/or backed up to resume business under emergency conditions. Non-essential records do not need the same care or consideration. The final designation, which is either OPR or OFM, has no bearing on your work, so you won't need to consider this holdover from some dated legislation. For as many times as you create and receive a record, you are going to face a retention decision. Some of those decisions are easy, such as identifying and destroying a transitory record. But many of these retention decisions will take some time and careful consideration. Only regular and consistent experience with your approved retention schedules is going to make it easier. It's important to understand that while you have hundreds of retention series options, the specific nature of your work will narrow down those options to something closer to a dozen or half a dozen. The first thing you want to do when faced with any retention determination is to ask some questions. Determining whether the record is unique to your agency will guide you to your general or agency-specific schedule. Understanding how a record is processed and who is involved will reinforce which schedule to use and land you in the correct functional category in the table of contents. Understanding the context of a record is going to reinforce that functional category. And knowing what the record is about will help you narrow in on the appropriate record series. Once you've addressed these foundational questions, visit your approved retention schedules on our website. Using the 3 main navigation techniques we showed you earlier, find the record series that works best for the record at hand. If you still aren't clear on the appropriate retention series, reach out to the records management team at the Washington State Archives. We are here to help. Many of our state and local government agencies are caught in between paper and digital processes. As your office goes digital, it's important to consider how you'll manage the paper backlog. You can transfer physical and digital archival records to the Washington State Archives at the end of their retention period. But please note, you will be responsible for responding to public records requests for any archival records you hold on to. Make your life easier by making your archival records our responsibility. And if the records are designated non-archival, you'll have to think about what should be retained and/or digitized and what can be defensibly destroyed. Consider scanning non-archival records with extensive retention requirements or those that are frequently accessed. Organize and store physical non-archival records with retention requirements shorter than 6 years. And please note, be selective about the records you digitize. Going digital makes access easier, but it can also turn a paper problem into an electronic one. Organization and planning are key, no matter what format you choose to retain your records in. Anything you create or receive electronically needs to be managed electronically. Instead of file folders tucked away in cabinets, we have digital files saved to folders and subfolders across various software and storage platforms. It's never been easier to access or share a record. But as technology evolves and the volume of digital data increases, we've got to rethink the ways we manage information. Digital storage is all about the where and the how. Where are you going to store your digital records and how will they be organized? The challenge lies in scaling that understanding across staff and time. The right electronic storage location will provide accessibility and security. You want to access your work and track its development, but you also want to make sure that it's protected from any internal or external threats. I don't know about you, but I have digital files all over the place. On my desktop, in the shared drive, filed away in our content management system. The more clarity your team can bring to digital storage, the better. And while I wish I could tell you that throwing all of your digital records into a SharePoint site is the answer, it won't matter where you're storing anything if it isn't organized. Work within your department or agency to develop a file plan or folder structure that is easy and intuitive for your team to use and helps you apply retention and practice efficient electronic records management. Now let's talk about metadata. We live in a digital world where every little thing displayed on a screen can be explained by data living on the back end. That background information is metadata. The metadata associated with a digital image, for instance, can be descriptive, such as a photographer's name, but also technical, like the image file format. Every electronic record you create or receive is going to have metadata associated with it. This basic information helps to distinguish one electronic record from another, making them searchable and discoverable. Metadata is an essential element of any digital record, which is why digital records need to stay in a digital format. We can all relate to the experience of browsing the aisles of a grocery store by reading labels. Metadata are just like those labels. They allow us to search, identify, and manage our digital records. And a lot can happen in the length of a retention period. It's you and your agency's responsibility to make sure that your electronic records are accessible no matter what year it is. Conversion and migration are the best strategies for preserving access to your electronic records. When you convert an electronic record, you are changing its format. And when you migrate an electronic record, you are moving it to a different location. Have you ever had to move your information from one phone to another or from one computer to another? That's migration. Ever turned a Word document into a PDF? That's conversion. These two strategies will go a long way towards maintaining your digital records so that they can fulfill their retention requirements. This is the main thing that we want you to understand about retention. Your responsibility is to keep your agency's records for the minimum amount of time listed in the retention schedule, and then either destroy them or transfer them to the Washington State Archives for preservation or appraisal. Please keep in mind that there are only two agencies authorized to be legal custodians of your records. That's your agency or the Washington State Archives. You can't transfer records to an individual, a library, a historical society, or anything like that. And you can't allow staff to keep records as personal possessions. So what can you destroy now? Transitory records have temporary informational value and should be deleted or recycled as soon as possible. You'll find a whole section of record series at the end of both the core and state general schedule that will help you connect your transitory records to the appropriate DANs for disposal. Thankfully, a significant percentage of the public records we create and receive are transitory. This holds especially true for email. Your best defense against transitory records is to dispose of these records as soon as you've identified the DAN that gives you the legal authority to do so. By getting rid of what you can, when you can, you'll make records management so much easier on yourself. Agencies can choose to hold on to records past retention for a variety of different reasons, but there are a couple of situations where you would absolutely need to hang on to your records past their minimum retention. One is in the case of a litigation hold. If there's a lawsuit pending or ongoing, and you have records that are responsive to that litigation, you would need to keep those records until the litigation has been resolved or the hold is lifted. The second situation is if there's a public records request. Let's say you've got records that are 20 years past their retention. You've already identified them as non-archival and you plan to destroy the records next Monday. If a public records request comes in this afternoon for those records slated for destruction, you'll still need to provide them to fulfill the public records request because they are still in your possession. Once the request is fulfilled, you can resume with destruction or transfer as planned. We rely on you to help us identify what record series to highlight or whether the language in those series becomes dated or obsolete. We do everything we can to stay on top of retention series updates, but we're juggling the retention schedules for all state and local government agencies, and we need your help. You are our subject matter experts, and retention schedules are living documents that are regularly revisited and revised. If you don't find what you're looking for on our website, or you're not even sure what you should be looking for, we're here to provide advice and consultation by phone or email. It's the best part of our jobs to connect with all the diverse state and local government agency representatives, so don't be shy with your questions or concerns. All of our services are free, and there is no record too small or project too big to reach out and ask for help. It's what we're here for. Thank you for your time.